Hello, 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 Angel here. Welcome to or back to this space. Love to see you here one more time. So today, as you can see from the title, I'm doing a VR at Nova Mundi Tarot, hashtag editor deck picks, but I'm going rogue from the get-go because you know me, I do like to add my own flavour to things, you know. So I'm going to be giving my recommendations, but I'm also going to be adding a bit of show and tell with the decks that I use in my own practice, and maybe a little bit of a tidbit about my own experience with the practices that are mentioned in each of the prompts. Now there are 15 prompts, and I think I'm going to divide this into 3 videos. There'll be 5 prompts in each video. So with that being said, have I spoken enough? I think I have. I think I most definitely have. So if you're ready, if you're steady, let's go. So the first prompt is inner child work, a deck you recommend for inner child healing, one that feels safe, nurturing and playful, ideal for connecting with innocence, creativity and emotional truth. Now, may I put my 2 cents worth in here? Could I be so bold? I'm going to say that any practice that I decide to investigate or explore, I tend to sit and think about if there's any decks that kind of intuitively hit me from, that I feel drawn to work with. So for instance, with inner child work, there might be some kind of playful deck that I have in my collection that, intuitively like hits me like a bolt of lightning. I'm like, oh yeah, that would definitely be the kind of deck that I want to use for this practice. I'm also going to say that I have been known to go through my storage area, my tarot storage area, and kind of like, look at the decks I've got and see if anything like, gives me some jazz hands like, hey, I'm here, use me. I've got something to tell you. I've also been known to, I'm going to say, when you get like your cards out, should I do a bit of show and tell? I'm going to do a show and tell. Wait. Okay, don't worry about the deck. This is the Dreamkeeper's Tarot, I think it's called. I never do this. Well, I used to do this when I first started my practice. When you like kind of fit, you kind of close your eyes and you feel your hand across the deck, and you get this like warm, tingly feeling when you like kind of come upon your card and you stop, and then you take the card that creates that warmth, that tingly feeling in your hand. That's kind of what I do with my tarot shelf as well. I kind of, if I'm not getting anything that's like, singing to me, like, hello, you can use me, I'm going to be really helpful in this practice, then I kind of do this, I kind of close my eyes and I just wait and see where I'm feeling drawn to on my tarot shelf, and then I will choose that deck. So that's kind of what I do. Let's talk about some of the decks that I use for inner child work. So my experience with inner child work started with the Tower of Oneness. This was a Kickstarter that I backed, and I kind of just got a bee in my bonnet that, 1 month, a couple of years ago, maybe a year, 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to, get to know this deck and start using it. And that's what I did. I started, pulling some cards and, just working with the deck. And I had no plans to do any inner child work. But when I started to use this deck, my inner child started coming through in the readings that I was doing, and I was like, well, this is weird, and I just lent into it. I just, I went with it, and that's what I did. I started using this deck, and did some fantastic readings with it. I did some amazing meditations with my inner child, and when I came out of this, out of the meditations, some of the images in this deck kind of like really resonated with me. Sorry that you can hear my washing machine taking off. Some of the images in this deck really resonated with me with how I'd kind of experienced the meditation with my inner child. So this one kind of chose itself, and it kind of prompted me to start with my inner child work, which I hadn't really planned on doing. Then I kind of brought in a couple of other decks. This one was an oracle deck that I had in my collection. This is the Sea Soul Journey Oracle cards. This kind of made sense to me because my inner child likes to, I'm going to say like meet me as my adult self. This sounds very bizarre and very woo-woo, but if you're here, you possibly like woo-woo stuff. My inner child likes to meet me on a beach setting, on a very sandy, very blue watered beach. So this kind of made sense for me. And then when this deck came into my collection, the Creative Consciousness Healing cards, it just felt like a no-brainer basically. And so I even added this to my repertoire, dare I say. These are the bags. And these are just so gentle. It's like going into a fluffy cave with this deck and being embraced. Yeah, it's like you know, a very nurturing, comforting, loving, fluffy embrace. So yeah, I've had some very very powerful readings with this combination of decks. So these are the decks that I use. That was my experience, but what are the decks that I would recommend? Let's get into it. Now, I would recommend any deck that gives you a nostalgic feel, a deck that gives you like, takes you back to the time when you were a child, where you felt safe, innocent, or, you know, really, really happy. So I'm going to recommend, or if I was recommending for myself, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go what I would recommend for myself had I never done any of these practices before. I think we're going to go from that. We're going to come at it from that direction. So the Kawaii Tarot, this reminds me of my soft toys when I was a child. Mystical Medleys Tarot reminds me of Saturday morning cartoons I used to watch as a child. And the Wizard of Oz Tarot, well, that totally reminds me of a very safe, comforting time in my life when I was at my nana's house, and I used to watch their coloured TV and their VHS player, and they used to pop Wizard of Oz in for me on the television. I used to watch this amazing, beautiful film in colour, which we didn't have at home. We had black and white. Anyway, so this deck I've edged myself in all different colours because I love me some colour, and the same with the Mystical Medleys Tarot. So let's have a quick look at these three. This one I haven't used yet, and I'm really thinking, I really honestly am thinking this is going to tap me into inner child work. So yes, these two haven't. Obviously, you know, the Tarot of Oneness actually solidified its place in my practice for that work. But I do really feel that this one is kind of nudging me for the inner child, because it really speaks to me so much of that nostalgic time in my life when I felt so safe and comforted and cozy and looked after, and, you know, that belonging that, you know, you kind of lose, I think, when you get older. Or I know I have anyway. I'm babbling. Stop babbling, Angel. Stop babbling. So for that reason, if I was to recommend, you know, to myself, a deck for inner child work, I think it would be one of these three. All three are very, very colourful. They just make me happy looking at them. I do tend to go for this one when I'm feeling a bit like I need a bit of a rest from my darker, heavier decks. I do feel like this one is it gives me, you know, it makes me feel embraced and nurtured. This one was such a long time ago that I read with it, I can't remember what it was like as a reader, so maybe I need to get this one out and take a look again. There goes my washing machine again. Never work with props, animals or children, isn't that what they say? It's all kicking off here at home. Okay, so yes, so that is my answer. You've got three different choices there as my recommendations for the first prompt. Let's get into prompt number two. Number two, shadow work. A deck that's powerful for helping readers face their shadows, honest, deep and unafraid to confront the difficult. This is your recommendation for deep transformation and self-inquiry. Ooh, I do like this prompt. Okay, we're going to have a bit of a show and tell in a wee second. I think I'm going to give you a wee small bit of a tour of my my shadow work decks, which is in a specific basket beside me, because I do like, wait, that sounds very macabre to say like, but I do a lot of shadow work in my practice. Let's get into the decks that I started off using when I started working with my shadow. I'm going to be honest and say that when I first started my shadow work practice, I was literally stumbling about in the dark. I didn't really know where I was going, what I was supposed to be doing, and, you know, what I was supposed to be, you know, exploring or excavating or pulling forward. So when I first started with shadow work, I started with the Magic of You Oracle. I edged mine in black. I started with the Dream Keeper's Tarot. This is mass market. I edged mine in silver with the silver Sharpie. And this is the Samhain Season of the Witch Oracle. Excellent readers. Really, really great. And I used them for quite a while. Until I didn't. And I can't even think what the catalyst was that I changed these decks out and started using something else. But I do know, I'm telling a porky pie. I know exactly what it was. I found a second-hand deck on eBay that I had been thinking about bringing into my collection, a bit on and off. I was like, yeah, I'd like to get hold of that if I see it second-hand. And one day I came upon it on eBay and purchased it. And when that deck came into my collection, these removed themselves from the shadow work practice. Can you guess what deck that was that came into my practice that took over these? I think you can. Let's get into it. I think you knew. I think you know. You knew the minute I mentioned this. When I led in and gave it a little prompt. It's the Darkwood Tarot. Of course it is. Still haven't edged my red card. It's still there, peeking at me, laughing at me. This was the deck that I got in, and when I got this in, it just like blew me out of the water. I kid you not, and it became my ride or die deck for shadow work. Now this deck tapped me into, which I've spoken about so many times, but I'm going to say it anyway because, you know, I'm kind of, you know, revisiting how I got into these practices and the decks that I use and the recommendations that I would give to myself should I want to restart this practice or become a newbie or being a newbie one more time. This tapped me into the red bonnet and the inner wolf facets of self, and that's when this facet of self work just naturally developed within my practice. And since then, you know, my inner heroine has come forward, my inner witch, my mausoleum, this inner mausoleum that I've built, that I, you know, hold all these memories and things I don't really want to let go of, and even other facets of my shadow that I have locked up in this mausoleum to stop myself from having to look at them, or that I'm possibly ashamed of. And I've spoken about this before, that I almost feel like they're ghosts that are haunting this inner mausoleum, that I'm trying to free and I'm trying to release. And unfortunately, those ghosts of that mausoleum have become ugly because of the way I have maybe not like purposely thought of them as, but because of the way I've treated them and think of them as, they've become ugly over time. Almost like my inner demons. I'm going to say that. It all sounds very woo-woo. So this was like the kind of catalyst for getting into the real meat and potatoes and getting to the bones of my shadow work. That blooming washing machine, honestly. Okay, let's move on to a couple of the decks that I use for shadow work. Now, as you saw from the basket tour, I do have a lot of darker decks I use for shadow work. I'm going to say these three are kind of the decks that got me started with this exploration of my inner mausoleum and the major breakthrough of my shadow work when I first started. This is the the Tower of Haunted House. This is the Fallen Angels Oracle, and this is Tarot V, which I absolutely adore. They're all mass market. Now, I do have some second-hand indie decks I found, but I wanted to keep this to mass market to kind of give you an idea. Now, when I was first exploring this shadow work, I was kind of, running around this mausoleum and the area around my mausoleum, and these three decks kind of spoke to me of that. You've got this character, dashing around a haunted house. You've got this almost like, it feels like a graveyard, church graveyard feel, and this one even really gave me that vibe with the vampires that are hiding. They're keeping out of the sun because they'll get burnt. They have to keep the shadows, which kind of spoke to my ghost in my inner mausoleum. They were hiding, So yeah, this kind of developed over time. And when I saw this deck I saw on Lindsay's channel, which I mentioned before, and when I saw this deck, and I was like, I know that's definitely going to really help me within this practice that I'm working with, which was the inner mausoleum work, which had just started to appear within my practice. So sometimes it's not just the matter of me going to my tarot shelves and feeling or speaking to me. Sometimes I can even see decks online that obviously call to me, and I'm like, oh, that's got something to tell me, that's going to help me in my practice. And there's another deck actually that I use, which I've recently got in for shadow work, which you've seen recently if you've watched it in my recent videos, which I'm a total major fan of. I love it. I would not be without it. It's one of my most favourite oracles in my collection. I'm going to dare to show you anyway, even though I've shown it recently. And that was exactly what happened with that one. It was like I saw it and I was like, oh, that has got to come into my practice. That has definitely got something to tell me and something to teach me. So can you guess what deck that is? Of course you can. Of course you can. It's the Cave of Sybil Oracle. Of course it is. These are the backs. Keywords are on the back. You might have seen this one because, I have shown it quite recently because I blooming love this deck. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I understand it's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. And I'm definitely going to say that when I started with shadow work, had I seen this deck or been given, if I had, if myself now had given my, newbie self this deck and put it in my hand, I'd have been like, not on your Nelly, no way, Jose. Yeah, I would have run a mile. But a bit of experience and a bit of exploration and, this inner work that I've been doing has kind of, opened me up to it. But what is the deck that I would recommend to my newbie self should I be starting out in shadow work? So I think that would be these two. This is the Black Violet Tarot, mass market, and the Soul Mirror Oracle, also mass market. This used to be an indie deck, and it was made mass market so everyone can get their sticky mitts on it, which I did. And when I did that, I was so glad that I did, because I had a major epiphany with this combination of decks. And as you'll see, or as you saw from the tour of my shadow work deck box, these were in that box because these are decks that I do use for shadow work when I feel like I need a bit of a shake off. I need a bit of I'm like, oh, this is really heavy. So I kind of pull these decks out as a pairing to still receive the same message, but these decks are for when I'm not feeling as brave and as tough to take in what is being what the message is, or what is being what I need to learn, or what I need to receive. So these decks help me with that. They're a little bit gentler, I'm going to say. They still give you the message, but they just do it in a little bit more of a comforting way. I think I'm going to say that. Now, I don't know if the intention with this deck was for shadow work. I mean, obviously, you know, any deck can be used for shadow work. Any deck can be used for divination. Any deck can be used for inner child work. You know, the world is your lobster when it concerns decks that you want to choose, or, you know, that you're going to use for specific practices. But this really spoke to me of shadow work, and I don't know if that's because of the dark, you know, the dark background, whether that's why it speaks to me of shadow work. I don't know. I can't really say, but they just, you know, they slotted themselves into that position in my practice, and I'm really glad they did, because there are a lot of times, I love this, there are a lot of times that I do bring these forward in the middle of another reading. I've got, you know, cards strewn all over my desk, and I'm like, oh Gordon Bennett, I need a bit of like downtime, but I don't want to leave the reading that I'm doing. It's important work, and so I bring these two out to they kind of like catch me, you know, sort of that, you know, think of that fall from the tower, instead of that fall from the tower, you know, full speed and, you know, with no parachute. This is like my parachute. This is my shadow work parachute. Can I say that? They catch me, they hold me, and they give me a very soft landing, but they give me the same message. A bit like Alice in Wonderland, falling down the rabbit hole. It's that soft fall. I can still look at things, I can still pull things out of the cupboards and, you know, eat things on the way down, but they're going to take me to the depths of the message. That was great. I'm so poetic today. Let's move along. Okay, so prompt number 3, deity work or spirit guides, a deck that serves as a spiritual bridge, perfect for working with deities, spirits, or guides, or of higher realms. It holds secret, sacred energy and supports devotional practices or channeled messages. Now, I'm going to separate this into deity and spirit guide, because for me that those two practices are very, very separate. I'm going to start with spirit guides, and the spirit guides deck that I actually use and have used maybe since maybe like after the first year of my practice, something like that, is the Ancestor and Angels deck, or is it Angels and Ancestors? Angels and Ancestors by Carl Gray. This was a beautiful message that I received from my guides yesterday, and the day before that, release old and rest, move in new direction. The day before that, I had pulled these two cards from the Mary L. Tarot, which is totally speaking to me recently. The Tower, you know, let go. Let it go, baby. Let it fall, let it crumble. To move forward, to open the gates, to get through in this new direction, to meet new people. Ooh, I love it when, you know, messages are reinstated. Love that. Anyway, so sorry, that was digressing. These are the backs. I edge mine in gold, because who doesn't like a bit of gold? And this deck is the only deck, I think, so far, I've pretty much felt that I needed to speak with my guides. What can I say about this deck? I'm going to say that I always go to the guidebook for this deck. I think the guidebook is really, really helpful. There are angels, obviously, as the name suggests, in this deck. Do I work with angels? I don't know, because at the moment, which is actually quite, you know, coincidental, I am currently this month diving into my connection with my guides, and possibly, I saw a stone out of place on my altar, and possibly deepening connections with guides within my spirit team that I maybe haven't made such a strong connection with previously. More about that in my May favourites wrap-up video of the month. Anyway, go back to this deck, which is what we're supposed to be talking about. Yeah, it's just really, I'm going to use the same words again. It's really gentle, it's really supportive, it's really nurturing, but saying that, it gives it, you know, it gives you the message on the nose. Can I say that? You know, it tells you what you need to hear. It's not going to it doesn't sugarcoat it, but for me, this deck tells me what I need to hear. Yes, so this is my spirit guide deck thus far. I am working with a couple of other decks this month, which I'm going to, you know, they're not my tried and tested. I'm just experimenting with them. So this is a deck that I use. What is the deck that I would suggest to my newbie self to use for spirit guide work? Let's get into it. Now, before we dive headlong down that rabbit hole, let's just speak about other spirit guides. Now, I do have other animal, or like animal allies, sorry, that I work with. This is the Shamanic Medicine Oracle, and this is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. And my spirit animal, which I wasn't looking for, wasn't, searching for, wasn't expecting, came through on these decks. My spirit animal, or not spirit animal, animal ally, sorry, is not a raven, it is a bison. And that energy just spoke through this deck to me. And so since then, these decks have, been associated with my animal ally. So yes, so that's another example of certain decks just channeling certain energies for me, a bit like the Tarot of Oneness with the inner child work that I started doing. So yeah, spirit guides, as mentioned, I'm really tapping into that energy more this month than ever before. And it's not because I haven't been interested previously, it's just that, I don't know, it's like really, it's not even tapping me on the shoulder. My spirit guides aren't just tapping me on the shoulder, they're like proper, shoving, proper that was proper English. They're proper, full body shoving me, like, we need to have a conversation. You need to get your ducks in a row, lovey. Let's do some serious talking here. So what are the decks that I would suggest for myself as a newbie trying to contact my spirit guides? Let's get into it. Finally. Now, I think I would recommend these kind of decks, oracle decks. I think I would recommend to myself, should I be starting with spirit guide work. This is the Pocket Animal Spirit deck by Kim Krantz, and this is the blue back, which I think is the first soul cards, number 1. This is obviously, there is no guidebook to this. This is just, what you intuitively feel or see or receive as a message. This one has a little guidebook, which I think is really, really good. And so I think for, exploration and just, dipping my toes in, I think but both of these would be a good option. This reaching out, trying to make contact. I'm going to speak about this deck in the next prompt as well, just, spoiler alert, FYI. I mean, look, this speaks to me of like, this could be your guides, that are, they've got this, connection. They're waiting for you on the sidelines, waiting for you to make that connection with them. And this kind of thing as well, you've got this could be you and you've got your guide behind you. I just think that the images really speak intuitively of this presence or this support. That's what I see anyway in the images, but obviously, what you see and what I see are two very, very different things. But I think this is the kind of decks, or these are the kind of decks I would suggest for spirit guide work or animal ally work. Now, let's speak about deity, which I decided to separate from this prompt. Deity work, I'm currently in the midst of deity work with a new deity to me that started calling back in January. I'm going to link a video about my call from deity in the description box if you'd like to take a look. That gives a bit more of an explanation. The decks I'm currently using for that practice are what's it called? Remembering the Sweet Fall Tarot and the Lost Oracle, as well as one other which I'm not going to show you because I've shown them recently and they're in that video if you'd like to take a look. What decks would I suggest for myself for deity work? Well, I'm going to say that kind of depends on the deity that you feel is coming through to you and calling to you. But here are my suggestions to my newbie self. So this is the deck that I would recommend to myself if there wasn't a specific deity that I felt was calling to me, but if I wanted to kind of dip my toes into deity work. This is Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle. This is a mass market deck which I purchased quite early on in my practice. I think the guidebook is amazing. There are several different goddesses. So we've got, for instance, Hera, Amplified Awareness. I love the art style of this deck. So there's all different goddesses from all different cultures. You know, it's bright, it's colourful, it's, you know, it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not so intense. It's a very gentle deck, I would say. And I think the proof is in the guidebook, or the proof of the pudding is in the guidebook. Now, I'm just going to show a couple more images here, and then I'm going to show you the guidebook as well. So that's really where this deck shines for me, I'm going to say. So I know in the beginning of my practice, I kind of pulled one of these cards every Friday when I was doing like a self-love Friday, and I would work with that goddess for the week, and I would do the exercise in the guidebook. Let's get to that. So for instance, in the guidebook, let's go to, who should we go to? Let's go to Doobie. Let's, oh my goodness me, it shouldn't take so long. Just choose a goddess angel, come on. Okay, let's go to, okay, we'll go to number 13 because it's unlucky for some, but not for us, it's like lucky for us. Hecate, Magic and Crossroads. So you've got like a bit of a backstory or a bit of a mythology about the goddess. You've got Hecate's message, how you can call on Hecate, or, you know, whichever goddess you're looking at. So if you've been neglected, oppressed or bullied, to work with magic spells, when you must take difficult decisions, for help communicating with loved ones who have crossed over. Then you've even got activities and rituals that you can partake in to kind of make contact with a deity. Then you've got like Hecate's magical card spreads. That's the same for every deity, and you've got like a 4-card spread, which is, I think, amazing. And then you've even got like creating an altar for the deity, the objects, the fruits, the flowers, the herbs, the incense and scents, and the stones and the crystals. And that's for every deity in the guidebook, every goddess in the guidebook. That's amazing. That's a really great start to dip your toes into deity work, I think. So for that reason, that's the deck that I would recommend to little old me, should I be, or had I been a newbie one more time. So let's get into prompt number 4, Ancestor work. A deck you suggest for connecting with ancestral wisdom, whether for lineage healing or honouring those who came before. This one opens the paths to ancestor connections. Now, the deck that I first started working with when I worked with my ancestors in the beginning, about 4 years ago, was the soul cards. And these decks, I used both together. I got some amazing readings from these decks. I love it that there's an intuitive oracle deck that has no keywords, which allows me to run free with my intuition. I love that. Then I believe I got in the Tarot of Mystical Moments, and when I got that deck in, it stole the spotlight. It really did steal the spotlight. So let's get into the Tarot of Mystical Moments. I'm sure if you followed my channel for any length of time, you will have known, or you will know it, you will have seen this one before. These are the backs. It was edged out the box, and this is a beautiful deck. Now, I've had some really amazing readings with this deck, and it's a really supportive deck for me. Now, I have taken this deck with me to England. What was that, almost 2 years ago now, when I had to go back for a family emergency, and this was a really supportive deck. So, you know, if it hadn't already secured its bond with me and within my practice, then it definitely did on that trip, because it was just I just so needed it. So this is a beloved, tried and tested deck. I decided then, about maybe a year ago, that I wanted to bring another deck in for my paternal ancestors. So this I was using for my maternal ancestors. And I decided to bring the Dreamkeeper's Tarot in, which I had been using for shadow work until the Darkwood Tarot came into my life. And I decided to use this one for my paternal ancestors. And I think the images just really speak to, the ancestral vibe. I don't know, it makes sense to me in my mind, and they've worked amazingly well. However, now, possibly in the last 2 weeks, working with the guides and working with my ancestors, I do feel that this deck kind of covers all the needs that I have for my ancestral work. So this one is actually having, it's going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Reincarnated is the word I'm looking for. Holy moly, that took a lot of time. Sorry about that. For another practice, which I'm going to go into in May's favourites. So That one is out of play at the moment for my ancestral practice. This is the deck I do use for ancestral work. What is the deck that I would recommend to my newbie self? Should I go back in time at the start of my practice? Let's get into it. So I think something to consider when working with working with ancestors is the timeline you want to tap into. So for instance, this deck would possibly be really good for, depending how far you're going back into your ancestral line, for maybe like your ancestors way back in the timeline. Now I purchased this one with that thought in mind, and it actually ended up not filling that niche for me. If it has filled something else, which I'm not going to go into in this video, but I do think this would be a really good alternative for tapping into ancient ancestors. So that would definitely be a recommendation. Moving along and sticking with the same theme of tapping into timelines, I think the Golden Tarot would be a great idea. I have used this for ancestral work to tap into a specific energy that I was looking at, and it really helped me a lot. And so I think, depending on, you know, the ancestor you are trying to make contact with, if there is a specific, you know, set of ancestors that you want to make contact with, this would also be a really great recommendation for that. But I think my overall recommendation would be the next two decks. So this is the Nightweight Tarot, and this is the Victorian Wisdom Oracle, I believe it's called. Both mass market decks. Beautiful decks. I love this. Look at this dancing going on. That's amazing. Release the confusion. Oh, I like it. And the conflict. I like that a lot. Now, I haven't used these two together previously. They've been on my kind of like pairings list to try, but I haven't actually gotten that far. So we've got Reflection and the Eight of Pentacles. And then finally we've got Innocence with the Two of Swords. Interesting. So yeah, I think this kind of oldie worldy kind of photograph, the sepia tones going on in these decks, would really tap me into ancestral work. So yeah, this is most definitely my recommendation to the newbie me starting out on their ancestral practice. Let's move on. So the last and final prompt for this video is Divination, a deck that excels in traditional divination, clear, direct and accurate, seeking predictions, insights or practical answers. Now that for me is going to be this deck, or generally these kind of decks, these kind of contemporary modern decks. This is the Sellenrace Tarot. This is a German deck. This is a loved, tried, true deck in my collection. It's gorgeous. I adore it. I've shown it very recently, although I haven't used it so recently, I've got to say. But this works for me for divination. It's clear, it's an easy reader, it's modern. You know, it grounds me in my life that I'm in now. You know, it's got quite modern images. You know, I could see these kind of people on the street. Possibly not this person, but maybe this person. And it just speaks to me of my everyday life. I love this image, I've said that before. I adore this image, and it's just, I love the colour palette. You know, it's just such an easy reader. I think this is beautiful. I love this. I love this. I love this. I love so many depictions in this deck. But which deck would I suggest to my newbie self for clear, concise readings? What do you think I would recommend? Put your guesses in the comment section. And to keep you waiting no longer, let's get into it. So I would recommend the Unfolding Path Tarot. This is the indie version, which I backed on Kickstarter. I keep mine out of the box because the box has got some silly foam within the box that makes the cards get stuck. So I purchased this bag from eBay, secondhand, and I think it suits it perfectly. This is my favourite shuffler. I love the cardstock of this deck, and as mentioned, it is now mass market. So I want to say Hay House, but I'm not sure. But you can totally get your hands on it. But again, look the Tower card. Again, it totally taps me into this contemporary, modern, daily life. You know, I could see any of these people. Well, obviously not a lion, but I could generally see any of these people on the street. This looks like Lucifer, does it not, from the TV show Lucifer? Is it just me? Possibly. So yeah, so for that reason, this is the deck I would definitely recommend to my newbie self for divination and clear readings. I've got to say, I don't tend to do as much divination in that way around like predictive readings or, you know, everyday readings, I'm going to say. So this one doesn't come out as often as it should. I adore this devil card. I think that is amazing with a capital A. So I really should get this out more. And I love this. I love it. I love the artwork in this deck. Why don't I get this out more? And I'm just going to show. Sorry, I just need to show you. I love the cardstock of this deck. It's my favourite deck to shuffle. Apart from the stunning tarot, which is also like a very similar cardstock. I don't know what the cardstock is. I'm not a cardstock person. But it's like, oh, it's just, it's like warm butter. Or it's like a warm knife through butter. That's what it's like. Yeah, so that's it. That was a terrible shuffle. Oh my goodness me. Let's finish on the Three of Cups. Why not? This has been a stalker card the last couple of days, so that's fine by me. That's it. That's five prompts in, and we've got 10 more to go. I'm going to split them up, as mentioned, into 2 videos that are coming very soon. Keep your eyes and your ears and everything else open. Keep watch out for those videos. Have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I hope to see you in the next video. Toodaloo.